Recording?
Yes.
Thank you. Aaron, I will wait for you to tell me that we're good to go.
We are good to go, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, welcome. It is 5:45 p.m. on Tuesday, August 18th, and I want to call to order this public hearing on the Ferndale School District's 2021 budget. Before we get into the agenda, will everyone please rise and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No, I want to stand. Thank you, John.
All right. The next item, 2.01, is the adoption of the agenda. Since this budget hearing has been called for one express purpose, which is to receive public comment regarding the district budget, this should be a relatively easy decision. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as written.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
All right, it's been moved to adopt the agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. The revised Code of Washington requires that school boards hold a public hearing each year for the purpose of receiving comments from the public on the following year's budget. According to law, any person may make a comment for or against any part of the annual budget. The 2021 budget has been posted on the district website for over a week, and this hearing was advertised in advance, along with 3 ways for people to make comments on our virtual setting. The first way required registering in advance to speak at tonight's hearing. After a person registered through the link that was provided, they were sent an email with information about joining this webinar. This evening, we will let any pre-registered person onto the screen to speak their comments directly to the board. If we have a fairly large number of guests, I would ask that those who wish to deliver an oral comment to the board indicate that by writing in the chat room, I would like to speak. When we get to that point of receiving comments, we will let you in one at a time. The second way to make comments about the district budget was to submit them in writing to the email address that was provided prior to this hearing. We said we would read those comments aloud at this hearing. However, we did not receive any written comments prior to tonight's Zoom hearing. The third way to make comments about the district budget is to type them into the chat feature on this Zoom webinar. We will read the comments about the budget written in the chat webinar before the conclusion of tonight's hearing. So Aaron, did we have anyone register for comments?
We have attendees, but we do not have anybody registered to comment.
And
Okay.
there's no one, Andrew, no one has yet typed anything in the chat room.
Okay. All right. Since we have not received any comments on the budget, I will ask Assistant Superintendent for Budget and Support Services, Mark Ebach, to talk about the development of the budget for 2021 and summarize its key features.
Thank you, Andrew. So we began the budget process in earnest back in January and have been working on it since that time. In fact, I think we've spoken with it about it, this group, the board. We've had a handful of meetings, the last several in a row, where we've talked about kind of the key elements of the budget this year, which has been a very challenging year, to say the least, in terms of budget development. I think any one of the developments would make it a very interesting and difficult year. You combine things in the way they have been, and it's been difficult to say the least. So we have, we began the budget, and like I said, in right after the first of the year, after the levy failed, we had to basically start over, rework the budget in entirety. And then as we were getting our heads wrapped around that, we ended up in a pandemic and going down a whole different level of complexity entirely. So getting to this point has been a lot of work by a lot of people. I'm here speaking about it, but it's been all of the exec team, all of the administrators, the folks in my office have worked diligently to try to put this together. And I believe we have done a very competent job. I think we've got a very good budget going into next year, given the circumstances. I know some of you have raised some questions about, planning for contingencies and kind of going into a year where we are going to have quite a few unknowns that come upon us, and that's one of the tricks is we've built in some flexibility to adapt as we go through the year, and our circumstances change, which we know they will. We just don't know when and how much or how often. So we've talked about most of the major components. We're budgeting for half a year worth of levy revenue because that's all we're legally allowed to budget for. So if the levy passes in November, we'll have to do some revising, but we're not allowed to project full revenue that we have not been authorized to collect. So it's half a levy collection. We're budgeting a fairly significant deficit, over $6 million deficit. And we have budgeted with 100 fewer staff members with us this year than we had last year, which is I believe the largest reduction in staffing that I have been a part of in my career. So if you have questions in general or right now, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, Aaron, will you give me ability to share screen? Or if you look at the agenda for the meeting under the budget item, you're going to see several documents. And for those of you that have been on the board a while, these are going to look familiar. Some of them more familiar than others, since a couple of them are a little bit newer in requirement. And for those of you that are new, I'll give you a quick rundown of what the different documents that you've had to review are. And these have been available to the public as well. So they've been on our website. We advertised for the last 2 weeks to let people know that these documents were available on our website and they could go and review them. The ESD has also reviewed them and asked questions, or they got to go through a double check to make sure everything's as it was intended in there. Melinda, you had a question?
I was just going to say, the documents you're talking about, those are the ones under the 7 o'clock meeting, not the 6.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Correct. It's
just if people were looking.
With the exception of the MSOC disclosure, they're the same documents. So the difference is on the 7 o'clock meeting, it includes the MSOC disclosure, which is a fairly new requirement from OSPI. And that basically, so the MSOCs used to be NERCs. Their MSOC is materials, supplies, and other costs. So the bulk of the school district budget, over 80% of the budget, is made up of personnel costs. The non-personnel costs are called MSOCs because we have to have an acronym for everything. So materials, supplies, and other costs. So we have to now, it's a new, within the last couple of years, requirement. We have to provide a breakdown that displays how much we receive from the state in revenue to pay for MSOCs, and then a breakdown of how much we're actually spending. in MSOCs. And you can see that we receive a little less than half of what we actually spend in terms of material supplies and other costs. And that includes textbooks, computers, online curriculum, regular curriculum, insurance, utility bills, basically everything that isn't the people. So that's what that represents there, and that's a required document for OSPI. The other is the F-195, which is the standard budget document, and it is in the required state format. So every school district in the state has to provide their budget in that particular format. It is not particularly easy to read. It is not particularly useful in terms of drilling down into details of what we're actually spending money on. But it's a prescribed format that contains all the revenue and expenditures for all the different funds in the districts, not just the general fund, but the ASB, capital projects, debt service, and transportation vehicle as well. So all those are included in there. The F-195F is the 4-year forecast. And we talked about that a meeting or two ago. And it was determined that we would use the non-levy version of the F-195F. So you will see, as you look over the course of the 4 years, we end up with a very significant deficit if we maintain kind of our current revenue stream that does not include levy and our current pattern of expenditures, which those two things won't happen together. Because when you look at the size of the deficit after 4 years, you will understand why. Yes, Melinda.
We have somebody who raised their hand and it's 6:58. I don't know if we need to.
Okay. Well, we'll get to comments in a second, I guess.
Oh,
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. And then the resolution, of course, is the actual document that you sign that says you are actually adopting the budget, and that gives the Linda the ability to sign the budget document that we send to OSPI. The fifth document, the citizens budget, is potentially the most useful in terms of actually getting a snapshot of what is happening in the district from a budget standpoint. But it is the one that is not required. So it is there just as a informational document we developed, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago now, I guess, as a means for trying to actually convey what is happening in the district from a financial standpoint in a more usable, digestible format. So that is reflective of the F-195 is same information, just boiled down into a little more usable format.
Thank you. Aaron, it's now 7 o'clock. We're going to be a few minutes late. Are you able to post anything that says that the board meeting will start a few minutes late?
I can post on social media certainly, but I can't start the other meeting until this one's done.
Okay.
Would you like me to do that?
Yes, please.
Yes. And
Okay,
is there
will do.
someone waiting
And
to
Dr.
speak?
Quinn, have we received any additional comments in the chat room?
I don't see them in the chat
We
room. but
received a hand raise from one of the
Okay.
attendees.
Can you
Would
let
you
that
like me
person
to-
in? Yes.
Yep, I sure can. Okay, Melissa Welch is, I
Okay.
gave her authorization to speak.
Hi, Melissa. You'll need to unmute, and then you're free to make your comment.
I apologize. I actually wasn't trying to comment.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Then
Okay, then,
I don't see any other comments.
all right. Well, thank you to all who took the time to attend this hearing tonight. And although we didn't have any comments, I know that we have a number of folks who are in attendance. This past year has dealt us many challenges, and we continue to face uncertainties about the future. I appreciate our administration's hard work and careful management. And during the decade since I first joined the board, I don't remember a year when the process of developing a balanced budget was so difficult. We've now reached the end of this public hearing on the Ferndale School District's budget for 2021. Thank you again to all the participants. Within a few minutes of adjourning this meeting, I will be calling to order a special meeting of the Ferndale School Board through a separate Zoom webinar. During the special meeting, the school board will be voting on the 2021 budget as well as reviewing the district's 2020 school reopening plan. I hereby declare this budget hearing adjourned.